Why don't churches follow the Lord's Supper? Even if you're a churchgoer and you think your church follows the Lord's Supper correctly, then you still have to ask why other churches do it so differently. This is not a religious channel, but it's not a religious channel. The term and ritual for the Lord's Supper first comes to us by way of the Apostle Paul in 1 Corinthians 11, before any of the Last Supper narratives were written in the Synoptic Gospels. The Gospel of John omits the breaking of the bread and wine entirely. The Lord Jesus, on the night he was betrayed, took bread, and when he had given thanks, he broke it and said, "This is my body, which is for you. Do this in remembrance of me." In the same way, after supper, he took the cup, saying, "This cup is the new covenant in my blood. Do this whenever you drink it, in remembrance of me. For whenever you eat this bread and drink this cup, you proclaim the Lord's death until he comes." In modern practice, the wine is the most inconsistent element of the Lord's Supper, usually because of its alcohol content. Since the 19th century, many mainline Protestants and evangelical churches have shifted to non-alcoholic grape juice. This, of course, was only possible after the invention of pasteurization and done to accommodate the temperance movement. It also enabled communion under drinking ages that were to be established as a result of temperance and prohibition. The Mormons took it a step further and omitted wine entirely, substituting water instead. The Catholic Church has generally not allowed the congregation to drink from the cup since the 14th century, out of concern for spillage. They have similar concerns about the communicant handling the host, which is really just another way of making the layman completely dependent on the priestly class. But the Church insists that the host alone contains the full essence of the sacrament, because they say so. Churches that still partake of the wine as prescribed include Orthodox, Lutherans, Anglicans, and many Presbyterians. But the Orthodox Church and some others differ by using leavened bread. Only some minor denominations accompany the Lord's Supper with an actual meal. I'm not going to referee these sectarian variations as if one of them is more accurate, because it really seems like they're all doing it wrong in some way. You would think that a common everyday religious ritual would remain consistent as it gets routinely passed down from generation to generation throughout the centuries. Yet this is a typical blind spot for religions, in which they fail to codify the ritual and over time it deviates. In Islam, there's disagreement over whether to pray 3 times a day or 5 times a day, because the Quran doesn't explicitly spell this out. Once the ritual variation becomes sectarian, it becomes an irreconcilable division. Perhaps the early church never imagined such a wide range of deviation. Or perhaps people today can't imagine that the ritual could have been something completely different from what we think. When I try to demythologize a religion, I try to explore the full range of possibilities that may have been available, even if the reality is probably somewhere in between. On the least supernatural end of the spectrum, I notice Paul's wording to "do this whenever you drink it." I'm surprised biblical literalists haven't latched onto this phrase, because it seems like it could be saying to perform this ritual anytime you drink. That would make it more like a toast than a religious rite. This could even explain why the New Testament thinks it's even remarkable to say anything about mixing water with wine. But the milieu that this originated in was more supernatural, and it may not have been so ordinary. On the other end of the spectrum, what if this was closer to the rituals of the mystery religions that were popular at that time? That might explain why John avoids it altogether, despite getting dangerously close to the cult of Bacchus with the turning of water into wine. It could also explain why more specific instructions for the ritual were not recorded, if that was supposed to be a secret guarded by the initiated. I also like to speculate that there may have been an element of a magic trick involved that has been forgotten. Even if there hadn't initially been a magic component, it seems to have evolved into one. The ritual accumulated a mythology with the belief that the bread and wine literally become the body and blood of Christ. This is performed like a magician on stage doing a card trick, except the reveal is unimpressive. There's no observable evidence of such a change, and it defies all testability, making it no different than the invisible flying dragon in my garage. Even the Catholic Church's handling of the consecrated elements is a mythology that conceals the ordinary. Their concern about spilling the precious blood of Christ as a justification for withholding the wine from the communicant is really just a focus on waste reduction with a sacramental veneer. Back when the church was a mom-and-pop operation, the Lord's Supper was a love feast. As business expanded into a global monopoly, the church cut costs to increase profit margins, and now you're lucky if you get a cracker and a shot of grape juice. That might sound cynical, but just look at the supply chain for the communion wafer before it gets to the priest's hands. It probably wasn't baked by nuns in the convent next door. It was more likely mass-produced in a factory. The Catholic Church's enshittification of the sacrament was possible because the Church told their customers they couldn't get the product anywhere else or they would go to hell.